I am a professor at Florida Atlantic University, and I co-direct the machine perception and cognitive robotics lab. And my work is involved both with applications of machine learning, AI, large language models, but also foundational research into the underlying engine of these models, both in terms of trying to manipulate and experiment on the models and drawing relationships to human cognition. Right now, what I'm doing is exploring the idea of thinking about using the mathematical framework of dynamical systems in order to think about large language models and language in general. Okay, so actually, it's probably appropriate for me to give a little kind of intro to this because it's all a little bit. It's sort of it's a little like self-referencing because the core thesis, the thing that I'm working on most of my time academically is comparing and grounding human cognition in what I think are the same computational principles as what LLMs are doing. And so the way I use ChatGPT and the way I use these models, not it's ChatGPT, Gemini, Claude, I have my sort of go-to cases, but they're often very similar. Is kind of an extra chunk of Cortex that has not just freestanding, like it's just free floating cortex that's living in a jar, but it's kind of wired up to my brain in the sense that over the course of the many months that I've been using these systems, and because they have quite a bit of memory, they are ChatGPT in particular is aware of my sort of theoretical framework, and therefore I can kind of go in and drop in an idea and allow that idea to sort of bounce back to me in the same way that I would probably and what I find is very similar to the way I might think through a problem or an idea. Um, it's almost like getting my own feedback, but in a way that has a couple of advantages. First of all, it's easier sometimes than having to actually think it through piece by piece. Let it do the auto regression instead of me. And second of all, I find personally that the ability to do this in this kind of dynamic conversational way, it's kind of like talking to myself, but talking to yourself is awkward. And in the case of ChatGPT, it's less so. It doesn't really have typically that much in terms of very often these conversations are not where I expect it to bring information to actually cite anything that I'm not aware of, although it's certainly that does occur as well, but very often to just kind of chew through an idea. So I'll give an example. We can try one right now. Okay, so I'll be something like, okay, let's talk about a dynamical systems approach to LLMs and language more broadly. Um, the context in an LLM chat may be thought of as a continuously evolving state of the system, and next token is the output of the system that contributes to the evolving state. Discuss this. Let's discuss this. I'm going to say let's discuss this in the context of my broader theory regarding human language. Okay, so it's very open-ended. So let's just talk about this. I'm not asking it for a specific piece of information. I'm not asking it for a formulation of this. I just want to think about this. So instead of me sitting here thinking about that, because there are many directions this can go in, I want to see where this goes because this will help me to evolve this conversation. So it's good to know exactly what I mean by this. I can, even though it's a new chat window, I'm using O3, so it's one of the reasoning models, and you can see a little bit of how it's going about it. You can actually pop that open. You seems to want to conceptualize, go ahead, applying dynamical systems to LLMs. Oops. Okay, so it's actually trying to formulate how you would do this formally. um, right off the bat, where this dovetails with your human language theory. So here it goes. It knows the theory already. We are old friends. It knows it's able to, quite literally, it's sort of finish my thoughts before I think them, which is exactly what it's technically doing. Um, so it's now, as O3 likes to do, makes tables. Um, so claim in my framework, language is a self-contained module. Right. That's a big piece of my sort of the big insight that I think we got from large language models is that language can self-generate. It's the statistics in the corpus itself are what generates the next token prediction, and that's really all you need. That the models, the transformers, are just a means to an end to uncover this underlying structure. So that's it's summarized my here's my claim in my framework language is self-contained module, and now here is the dynamical systems way of expressing that. The system linguistic system is its own high dimensional phase space with intrinsic upstate rules, sensory motor signals, and merely perturb its initial conditions. So that's I didn't ask about sensory motor signals. Um, it's very much in line with the broader framework that I've discussed within in the past. But these are exactly the kinds of branches of thought that I would engage in if I was just thinking about this myself. Writing, I could kind of, with pen and paper, is maybe the kind of notes I would take. But it's doing it for me in a very organized way. It's not telling me anything here that I didn't know before. It's not proposing anything novel per se. This particular formulation of the dynamical sketch, probably what I would come up with, similar to what I would come up with as well, because it's sort of what makes sense if you're trying to model this thing as a dynamical system. But so it's sorting through, doing some of the kind of maybe a little more challenging legwork of expressing and expounding on this simple idea, right? I just dropped in this single paragraph, half a paragraph, and then based on its understanding of our previous conversations, it's able now to expound on this in a way that's extremely useful to me. So that I could easily spend the rest of my day now going and taking one of these pieces and or over the course of the day, working through the uh, multiple components of this, and then further fleshing them out. So it really, for me, serves as a kind of priming the pump. Um, or I should say, I guess it's the pump. So and the pump is in some ways a reflection of my own thought processes. And what I can do is prime it, right? Drop in sort of a quick little seed of thought that if I were to say this to somebody else who wasn't GPT and wasn't familiar with my theory, of course, this wouldn't really make much sense. Constant element, I mean, thought of as continuous development state of the system. Next token is the output of the system that contributes. This is very dense. It's very compact, and certainly when I say discuss constant my broader theory regarding human language, that's not something that most people would have any idea what I'm talking about. Certainly, if I were to go on Google, that wouldn't be useful. I can't find a framework for thinking about my theory in relation to dynamical systems approach, but it's very well equipped to do this. But I really do see it in some ways as sort of a bionic brain for myself. It's a an extension of my own thought process. Oh, talking my Markovian versus non-Markovian keeps cropping up. This is a, a theme that I'm very that I focus on a lot, which is a critical piece of this. Typical dynamical systems are Markovian. The current state fully dictates what the next state's going to be. Large language model, that's not the case. The entire sequence we can think of as being the evolving state, and you need the entire past sequence, so it's inherently non-Markovian. So it knows that this is a fascination of mine that is highly related, and is kind of laying out in very organized detail all of the thought channels, thought paths that this initial half paragraph kind of generated. And so everything I'm seeing here, there's no surprises here. This is in some ways, like I said, it's sort of an elaboration of where my own thought process would go, but it dramatically accelerates this. And so I can spot right away which possible direction I want going, how I might actually start to piece this together formally in a way that would take me a lot longer, And also, as I said, this allows me to sort of dynamically iterate with this thing. So I might read through this thing and then say, let's focus on the particular formalization, you know, of how we talk about the evolving state, and dig down into that. And again, this is something where I'm not extracting novel information, but instead I'm simply kind of working through with this extra chunk of cortex, or almost. I sometimes like to think of it as like if I had myself sitting across from myself in the room, I've been talking to myself. Um, another version of me that can type really fast, and is actually
Mm.
a lot more organized. But in some ways, it really is kind of like having a conversation with my own brain, and it's extremely effective in this sense because I haven't really probed recently what its memory consists of. You can actually you should I believe you can actually go and look at your memory, but I found I don't need to. It's at this point when in relation specific to the things, the topics that I talk about consistently, as I said, about 95% of the time, when I'm not looking at recipes or advice for my dog or something like that, I'm basically talking about this. And that means it is primed and ready. It seems to know all the key facets of my theory sufficiently that it's able to just hit the ground running and run, with the particular thought bubble that I'm dropping into it at this time.
It gets to the same place that you would. And maybe it doesn't even get to a very interesting place. If you talk to sort of someone who knows about dynamical systems and read your theory, these are most of the things they would say. There's no like brilliant flashes of insight here. But it knows all these things and it can get to sort of that easy point really, really quickly.
Exactly. I think that's a perfect way of putting it. Now, I want to mention that sometimes first I'll ask it to play devil's advocate, challenge the theory. Sometimes I'll certainly ask it for relevant references, which it does a lot better than it used to, and it will pull up real references, not hallucinations in most cases. And I just discovered yesterday a paper from April of 2025 that's on a similar trajectory, no pun intended, and looking using sort of dynamical systems approach specifically for like prompt engineering and thinking about it in this way. So it certainly can often, if prompted in a more in a way that suggests it, can certainly provide me with information I didn't know about. But generally speaking, that's mostly not how I'm using it. And it's like you said, it's sort of where I would have ended up anyway, or somebody with this sort of core base of knowledge potentially would have known about. If I could sit down with somebody who knows dynamical systems and say, okay, let me explain what LLMs are doing and why I think that's possibly what the brain's doing. Exactly, I think that they would have somebody would very likely come up with a similar formulation, but it's a shortcut, in some ways to do the thinking I would have done otherwise, or that somebody else might have done otherwise, without, like you said, the flashes of inference, and really not going beyond sort of what I've already said, but simply elaborating. Really, in some ways, sort of what I think of these things as being perfectly well suited to, which is this kind of chain of thought, right? It's not innovating, and it's not even necessarily pulling information. It's simply saying, okay, given my core base of knowledge, this sort of, and it's sort of shared knowledge. Like this is what dynamical systems theory says. This is what the models can do. Now, what given that brain that has that core knowledge, what if I drop in this particular kind of a nudge and go in this direction? Where does it go? And so it's a way of just playing out what I think of as sort of latent ideas that are already in the world, right? These ideas are sort of kind of there, but it's more of a path of discovering them or finding them. I guess I should say, rather than even generating them.